Sarcastic, podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Agatha All Along. Now, before we jump into the review, I did want to just give a quick shout out to everyone who has joined the Movie Nerd family. Recently, I think we are up to about 44 subscribers on Spotify, and we hit 150 subscribers on YouTube, which is mind-blowing to me. So for everyone who is new, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me on this rather weird adventure of talking about films. So to jump into Agatha All Along, this is sort of a continuation, if you will, an offshoot of WandaVision. This is a character that is linked up with the Scarlet Witch. Now, I did not watch the entire series of WandaVision. It was not really my cup of tea at the end of the day. I didn't find it all that compelling to me personally, and I really just wasn't as invested in it. I'm not a huge Marvel fan, as I have mentioned in lots and lots of previous episodes. I feel like at this point, I do enjoy tuning into some of them. You know, I like Iron Man. I liked the first few Ant-Man. But I kind of like the strange sort of outlier movies when it comes to superheroes. Like, I really liked Black Adam, which I recognize as DC and not Marvel. I really liked the Eternals. I know, boo on me. But I like sort of the weird ones, the ones that aren't necessarily, big buff dude breaking cities. You know what I'm saying? So Agatha All Along sort of piqued my interest, mostly because of the buzz that is happening around this show. Lots of people are talking about it, some positive, some negative. And I wanted to tune in just because this sort of seemed like it might be more my cup of tea than WandaVision was, because I know that Wanda is sort of this tragic heroine / villain type character. I think that, she has this sort of good side to her and bad side to her. It sort of just depends on what movie she's in, what her motivations are. But Agatha, as far as I know about the character, which I will just outright say is very little, like next to none, is more of a villain character. She's more of like that evil, witchy character, which I found more interesting. And I will say, as far as the television show, I can't speak to the whole thing. There are only 2 episodes out so far, but I probably will not continue with the show just because I don't think that I am necessarily the target audience for it. Again, because I'm not a huge Marvel fan, and that this is just more sort of, I don't know what the word is. like I want to say it's sort of corny, sort of silly, which isn't necessarily what I thought it was going to be when I tuned into it. I really thought that they were going more the dark path, and there are some points in the show that are kind of like that. There are a couple of really cool sort of darker elements, but the majority of the show, I would say, is not that. The majority of the show is definitely more sort of silly, sort of ridiculous. And I didn't necessarily catch on to any of the characters or invest in any of these characters. Now, granted, it is the first 2 episodes. You don't necessarily spend a whole heck of a lot of time with any of them. I feel like the first episode, for someone like me who is not very invested in the Marvel universe, the first episode was pretty confusing because I didn't really remember all of that much from WandaVision. And like I said, I hadn't really watched the entire thing. And this show starts off basically where WandaVision stopped. So where that ended, this one kind of picks up and you continue from there. So if you haven't watched WandaVision, I would recommend watching that or doing a refresher of it before jumping into Agatha All Along. I didn't necessarily just really invest that much in the Agatha character herself. I think that she's kind of kooky and kind of interesting, but also sort of annoying. And I don't know, like some of the characters you don't meet until the second episode. You only get a very brief glimpse of them. I am sort of interested in seeing kind of what happens with Miss Hart going down the line, because she does not seem like she should be included. She is the woman that plays the mom from that 70s show. I just don't think that any of these characters really stood out to me as like, oh, that's super interesting. But I will say watching Agatha All Along did kind of make me crave sort of a more serious, witchy vibe kind of television show, a little bit along the lines of Discovery of Witches, but like not in the romance section, you know what I'm saying? But like if we could get like an evil sort of witchy story that is a television show, I think that would be super cool. It's what I thought this was going to be when I tuned into it, was sort of this like evil, more dark version of a witch story. And there's just too much kind of corny silliness in Agatha for me to really be all that interested in continuing forward with the series. But I can see if you are super into Marvel, if you really know this character and like this character, or if you just want to continue on from watching WandaVision, then you will probably really enjoy this one. I think that this one is really just going to depend on what your personal preferences are as far as Marvel. If you kind of are looking for sort of the same silliness that happens in a lot of the Marvel movies, like Thor, you know, losing his cloak or whatever and showing, this kind of gives me that vibe, like the bare butt kind of vibe. Like she is nude for a little bit, I think, in the first episode. I don't know that you see anything really much, but it just kind of gives me that vibe, that sort of silly Marvel vibe that I feel like I can only handle in small doses. But this one doesn't really catch me enough to where I really want to see, you know, where these characters go or kind of what happens. So I don't know, maybe I'll tune into a couple of the episodes down the line. It probably is going to be one of those shows that I wait for everyone to watch and review before returning to it, just to kind of see, like, does it improve? Does it not? Does it stay kind of roughly what I think of it? And then tune into it later once the series is over, potentially. So those are my thoughts on Agatha All Along. I would love to know what you guys thought. If you have watched this one, subscribe to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.